Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys. The bonus content we'll be covering today will be in the sport of MMA inside the UFC world. In today's bonus segment, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the latest UFC news. There is some title implications and some fights that have been announced by Dana White. So last night, the news broke that Ilia Topuria will be vacating his featherweight title and his aspirations to move up to the lightweight division. So there is currently no featherweight champion, but that brings it to what's going to happen at this featherweight division. At the return of Alexander Volkanovski after his year layoff will return to the main event at UFC 314 to fight Diego Lopez for the vacant featherweight title. So I'll be sharing my thoughts on both of those events. Ilia Topuria moving up does make sense to me because Ilia Topuria, you could tell, had a hard time cutting weight. I think he was a weight bully at featherweight, but he's accomplished some great things, knocked out some all-time greats of Alexander Volkanovski to become the featherweight champion, and then months later in his first title defense, knocked out another all-time great at this featherweight division in Max Holloway. So that's two insane knockout victories that you have on your resume. And now you're moving up to lightweight, and I think he has to get a lightweight title opportunity right off the bat because the money is there for that fight between himself and Islam Makhachev for the lightweight title in summer of 2025. Now, I think that's a big monumental fight. If Ilia Topuria could go on a run of knocking out Alexander Volkanovski like he did, knocking out Max Holloway like it did, and then taking the lightweight title from Islam Makhachev, that go down as one of the greatest UFC runs of all time. And I feel like that is a 50-50 fight between Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev based off of what Ilia Topuria could bring to the table. We know he has the striking and boxing background. If you look at Islam Makhachev's last few fights, him versus Alexander Volkanovski won. He won the fight, but it went all 5 rounds. He got banged up. He obviously knocked out Volk in the rematch. But you saw the punishment that he took from Dustin Poirier as well from the striking department, and we haven't really seen Ilia Topuria go deep in his bag in the wrestling department, the grappling department on these big time fights yet against these elite opponents. So that's why I think the money is there for that fight, and that's a true test for both respective fighters to see how great they are. I think that's the money fight that's about to be made summer 2025. Sign me up for Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria. And in the meantime, I know that Charles Oliveira and Ben Sarukin, Arman Sarukin, Charles Oliveira, Arman Sarukin, they can fight each other in the meantime and give us this big time fight. Possibly have that on one card. Can you imagine that? The rematch between Charles Oliveira and Arman Sarukin? And then you get Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev on the same card. That would be insane. But yes, I think that's the big move here. Now for the featherweight division, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez for the vacant featherweight title. Personally, if you guys follow the podcast, I said this was the fight that made the most sense for Alexander Volkanovski to return to fight Diego Lopez before trying to fight Ilia Topuria in a rematch for the featherweight title. Now, obviously, those plans are scrapped because Ilia is moving up to lightweight. But I've said all along, that was the perfect fight for Alexander Volkanovski to test himself to see if he still had it. Testing himself against an up-and-coming star in Diego Lopez at this featherweight division. But now we get it for the vacant featherweight title. And I like it. I think that's a 50-50 fight. Great main event for UFC 314. Alexander Volkanovski, with his overall skill set, is still an all-time great, but he's still got to prove to us that he can go out there and become the king of this featherweight division again. And meanwhile, he's fighting a dangerous fighter in Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez on a 5-fight win streak, and he just dismantled and dominated Brian Ortega at UFC 306. So I think that's a really fun fight, and that's going to be one to really settle who is the best at the featherweight division. Looking forward to that fight. But there is one more fight that I will be going over for UFC 314, and that was announced that Michael Chandler and Patty will be fighting in the UFC 314 co-main event. Another fight that will be taking place on the UFC 314 card at the lightweight division. So, nope. Excuse me. No disrespect to Patty here, but Michael Chandler just basically wasted 2 years of his career. Think about this, guys. Michael Chandler took 2 years off, took a 2 year layoff off, waiting basically for Conor McGregor to get that money fight. Never got it and never materialized, and it fell apart during the summer when Conor McGregor was supposed to come back, but then he pulled out of the fight. And it's seeming like that Conor McGregor will never come back and compete in a UFC octagon ever again. So then Michael Chandler gets himself busy again at the lightweight division, fighting Charles Oliveira, where he fought him at UFC 309. He got dismantled and dominated. I scored the fight in favor of Charles Oliveira 4-1. So then Michael Chandler not only takes 2 years off, but then gets outclassed by Charles Oliveira in their respective rematch. Then you go on to fight Patty, an up and coming lightweight fighter. Man, Michael Chandler, it's been a rough 2 years for you, my guy. But I think that could be an entertaining fight between Michael Chandler, the veteran Michael Chandler, and the up-and-coming fighter, and Patty. I mean, UFC has been waiting to build Patty. They've slowly but surely been doing it to try to make him a marketable star and a legitimate threat at this lightweight division. When you look at Patty's resume, his biggest win is against Tony Ferguson. Obviously, that's not the same Tony Ferguson that was an elite fighter for years and years in the past. He fought a washed Tony Ferguson. That's like currently on I think a 7-fight losing streak, maybe even longer or shorter. I know it's in that range. But as I digress, this is going to be Patty's biggest test. So I think this is a perfect fight for Michael Chandler. But yeah, I think this is going to be a very exciting year for UFC in the calendar year 2025. And I think the next big announcement will probably be John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. At some point, Dana White's going to have to announce it. But those are my thoughts on how the featherweight division is going to play out and the up-and-coming fights that we're going to see. And that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.